Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I am Anarita Bashalieva, along with co-host Dr. Victor Fett, Dr. Katerina Shrey, and our program producer, Professor Larry Sherray. We host a weekly discussion panel on Russia's war on Ukraine with guests from Ukraine, military experts, medical personnel, academics, artists, literary figures, and relief workers. Our panel is recorded and circulated nationally and internationally. We appreciate your comments and feedback. Special thanks to Marshall University Libraries and MUIT for making this weekly event possible. If you are joining us live on Teams, please feel free to use the chat to post any question for our guest. Today's guest will be introduced by Professor Victor Fett.
Thank you, Anara. It is my pleasure to introduce our contributor and a very passionate defender of Ukraine, Danish journalist Jens Alstrup, who joins us from Denmark now, who leaves to Ukraine back tomorrow. And he agreed to come to our program, as he did twice before, and report on whatever issues he thinks important in this rapidly changing global world. Before Jens starts, I want to voice an apology as an American citizen to Jens and his fellow Danish citizens about everything that we will be talking today about and the unacceptable position of current American government toward Denmark. Thank you. Thank you, Jens. The phone is yours, please.
Thank you very much. I actually start with Greenland. And let me say, I'm in Denmark right now. I have been here for more than a week, which is quite a lot in these days for me. And I have been here because of the anniversary of the full-scale war. And I have, there are so many developments at the moment, so I don't have a PowerPoint, but I have some subjects. And first one is Greenland and the European Union, NATO, and the possible consequences of all this. To put it bluntly, Denmark was very surprised when Donald Trump in his first presidency demanded or expressed his wish to buy Greenland. It turned out to become a diplomatic crisis. It went back in itself again, and we thought this was over, forgotten. And we had President Biden, and we thought that, well, now Biden is here, and we can never have an experience like that again. And then Trump was elected again, and here we are, where it seems to have been not forgotten by Trump, but the ideas of taking it by military means seems to have faded away. But who knows? We cannot tell. We will find out. But one thing we can say right now is it has done a lot of damage on the Danish view on America. We have for many years been one of the most loyal allies to America. We have connected our foreign policy very closely to America. And when you talk with people today in Denmark, it's more than 60% that think that America is an enemy to us now. And from best of friendship to the imagination of an enemy is really a very sad development. I am a long believer in the transatlantic connection, and it's extremely important for both parts. And I also accept the fact that Europe has done too little Denmark has done too little. But we are trying to step up now. But instead of stepping up in order to protect Ukraine, to protect ourselves against the Russian aggression, we are now working on building up our own industry, getting ourselves independent from American industry, and all the things that were so profitable and mutual advantaged for both parts across the Atlantic. All these ribbons are being cut at the moment because we are simply afraid. What can we do in the case that America don't support us and we have the F-35? Yes, they don't have a button where America can switch it off, but America do have the advantage of not providing upgrades. And without upgrades, it doesn't take very long because before these advanced fighter jets are, well, not worthless, but at least of less value. So we are using our resources on things that we only 1.5 years ago never ever would have expected that we should work with. I can also say about the Greenlandic people, they are very few people. They are about 50,000, where something like 10,000 of them live in Denmark, and about 10,000 of the people in Greenland are actually Danes. And up there, they really are in shock. I mean, children are afraid. They talk with their mothers. Can they sleep well at night, and so on. It's amazing. It's amazing. Reactions that I meet in Ukraine that is really in war. Of course, not that bad, but still, it's beyond imagination. I don't really have much conclusion there. The only thing I will say, and it seems that was for the time being the end of it, was that the European larger states, Britain, Germany, France, Italy, by the way, with Meloni, that's otherwise very pro-Trump, but not in this case. They supported Denmark fully. They have soldiers at Greenland, meaning that should Trump get the idea of using military forces, of course he can win in an afternoon, but he would, to do that, have been in fight with European troops and not only Danish troops. And that would in reality be the very end of NATO. And it's sad because we need each other. China is getting bigger and bigger, and Russia is getting more and more dangerous. So Europe needs America against Russia, and America surely need Europe against China. And Europe also needs America against China, but we are further away than you are. So for us, it's not as urgent as it is for America when we talk about China. And it's a total chaos. What it has done is that the European Union clearly now is talking about the military dimension. We have talked about it, but only talk. Europeans have always been good at talking. But now we actually see action. And the action, I mentioned it before, that is development of new technology to replace American weapons here. And you see, we have NATO, and NATO has always been the place where we had a military defense. Never the European Union. The reason we have it in our treaties, and it has a very prominent place in European communication, is more or less because of Charles de Gaulle in France that wanted an independent Europe independent from America. And reality is that, we put these fine words and speeches in our European Union, but only France, and maybe not even France, meant it for real when it comes to the bottom line. And but today you see it really happen. But when it happens, it's surely not the way that France originally imagined, because it is within NATO. Because if we make a military dimension only in Europe, we will advance the break over the Atlantic, and we don't want a break at all. And even advance it is really that would be the worst result imaginable. And another thing is, reality is, we have good friends that are not member of the European Union. It's Norway. Not that they are so big, but they are very wealthy and they have oil and gas. It's Iceland. Militarily, they are not very important. They don't even have an army, but they are important because of their strategic place in the North Atlantic. There is Britain, not to forget, after Brexit. They are not a part of the European Union, but they are part of NATO. And then we have the members of the alliance overseas, and that is, though not all of them directly, but Canada is a member of NATO. We should not forget them. And in a wider sense, we also have Japan and South Korea and Australia, and we are making treaties with them at the moment regarding development of sixth generation fighter jets and other things. And these developments are all developments where the US is not included. And that is the damage that has been done through all this. Also inside the European Union, we are challenged. Hungary and Slovakia are very fond of Putin and Russian policy. And when I say that, I also should mention that it seems that the population's got enough. There are big protests in Slovakia against Fico, and there is election very soon in Hungary. And the opposition is leading with 20% points, not only 20%, but 20% points. And it's within a little more than 1 month, and it's very, very unlikely that Viktor Orban can close that gap unless we are talking use of force, massive fraud, and so on, which we unfortunately cannot reject completely as an option. But let's see. The Hungarians, they are good at making revolts. If he should get ideas like that. We are also having a Danish election now. It was the only one that will know the election date exactly in Denmark is the Prime Minister. It's only the Prime Minister that can make elections. He or she must do it at the latest 3 weeks before 4 years after the last election. But we can have election at any time, and nobody uses the very last date because that eliminates room for maneuverability. And we should have had elections at the latest at October, and I think many of us expected to have it before the summer holiday, which is at the latest in the middle of June in our country. We have holiday a little earlier than the rest of Europe. That's Danish tradition. By the way, a very bad one because it's raining a lot in those weeks here. But that was a fun fact. When we talk about the Danish election, we had anniversary celebrated, or no, not celebrated, in memorial here. And that is to give you a view about how the political situation is in Denmark. We have 11 political parties with enough votes and enough signatures to participate in the election. And 9 of them are fully in support of Ukraine. One of them is in the European Parliament in group with Hungary. And one is really a strange party that subscribes on all kinds of strange conspiracies. So that is the picture we have. But that means that more than 90% of all the possible members of next parliament are most likely very much in favor of supporting Ukraine. We have a good part in that because the anniversary, 4th anniversary, was arranged by Freedom for Ukraine, which is the NGO where I am chair. We had a very good interaction with the politicians. We had almost 1,000 people in front of the Russian embassy to protest about the Russian aggression and to show the support for Ukrainian defense. I had invited a Ukrainian elite soldier from Special Forces. He's a diver, maybe a little unlucky choice because what he is doing is very, very secret. So we had a situation that a soldier was here to tell about fantastic operations of which he could not tell anything. But still, it was very good and very positive. And we had a school teacher from Kharkiv to tell about her and the children's daily life in Kharkiv, close to the Russian border, where they are bombed every single day, almost. So that was about the anniversary. Last year we were about 3,000. This year we were about 1,000. But it's not so long ago we had a demonstration, fortunately, in front of the US embassy, which is next to the Russian one. And that was to commemorate Danish soldiers lost in combat together with American army. And I think it was a very good and very positive way of doing it. Also because we have so good relations with America. And then we have this administration right now that is really doing its best to destroy these connections, and we must be careful not to speed up this process, as I told you before. Then when we have the anniversary, we have the very sad situation in Ukraine that they feel abandoned, especially by America. But it's not that you should feel ashamed by default, because also some European countries are not supporting Ukraine as they did earlier. The Nordic countries, we are still on full steam. We give, for example, small Denmark, we give more in actual numbers than big France. And when you compare pro capita, our support is way bigger than anything France has ever given, because it is so substantial, even in actual figures, what we give to Ukraine. And the other Nordic countries are not totally on our level, but they are not far away from us. Germany also gives substantial support. There were stories about that they wanted to cut about 60% of their support, but it's not correct. It's because something like 40% of the budget they use to support Ukraine is on a fixed number paid out in numbers every month, where the 60% are grants given for special purposes, and they just continue that way. So when they continue the usual fixed expenditure monthly, then it's only 40% of what they gave last year. But they have not stopped the special donations, and therefore it's still on the same level. But without Germany and without the Nordic countries, Ukraine would be in a very difficult situation. They are actually, but the European Union has agreed to make some loans, $90 billion. That's quite a lot of money. And that will be enough to keep Ukraine running for the next 2 years. Hungary made a veto against it, so we have not been able to do it. The individual countries give some extra money at the moment, and we expect that Viktor Orban will not be re-elected, and the veto can be removed, and therefore we can pay out this money by April. But before those of us who support Ukraine are too happy, I am sad to say that the meaning of these $90 billion only means that we compensate the loss of American support. We will, after that, not give as a total more to Ukraine than they received earlier. And I'm also sorry to say that what we gave to Ukraine the last year was not enough. It's not enough to make Ukraine win. And I will come to that in details in a moment, but that is the overall impression. Then we have the front line as it is right now, and then I will tell you about the situation against Russia at the front line. Up in Sumy, it's in the north of northeast Ukraine. It's business as usual. The Ukrainians were beaten inside the Kursk region, and they had to leave, and they are now at the border to the Sumy region inside Ukraine. And they have been there for a long time. I was there only 3 weeks ago, and I will be there again in 2 weeks. I'm there on a regular basis because one of the brigades we are helping is based up there. By the way, foreigners are not allowed entry in the area at all, but I am the exception that confirms the rule. They have great confidence and trust in me, and I feel very honored about that. Further down, we have Kharkiv, and there was a very good event on the front line there. Putin bragged to Western journalists that Western journalists could go with the Russian army, visit Kupiansk, and be guided around in the streets by Russian forces. And in a few days, the Ukrainians attacked, and then Zelensky walked around in the streets, or whatever is left of them, because it's all one big ruin. But it was the streets of Kupiansk where he walked around. And it was an absolute humiliation of Putin. And many people, at least here, start to talking about that was the beginning of the end. And now the Russian army would crumble, and we were on the direction of Ukrainian victory. But I must say, please hold your horses. This stretch of front line is the weakest manned part of the total front line on both sides, both Russian and Ukrainian side. So when the Ukrainians made strengthened the part of the front line and made an attack with extra forces, it was quite easy to get through. And the Russians have done the same. So it's same situation, both sides. And therefore, I must say, it doesn't mean anything at all when we look at the total mass of military on both sides. But of course, a victory is a victory. And it was a psychological humiliation of Putin personally. So you are not hearing me saying anything negative about it, but you hear me tell you that you cannot say that this is a game changer of the history of this war, because it's not. It's too small. Simply, it's too small. Further to the south, we have Donbass, and that is where we really talk about forces in a scale that can change the whole war. And there it is, unfortunately, not going very well for the Ukrainians. Konstantinivka is totally leveled. It's a question about time now, and not long time before the Russians will be there. Next city will be Druskivka, and it has already been evacuated. It gives a lot of logistic problems because the soldiers need to sleep and be somewhere when they are not active on the front line, and that used to be Druskivka for a very large number of them, but they cannot stay safely there anymore. And regarding Kramatorsk, which is next in line after Druskivka, there are so many bombardments that it's not regarded safe anymore. And it's also a question about when the Ukrainian military will have to remove their soldiers from that town. When I say remove them from the town, I mean their barracks, their places where they have their free time. They will not abandon it militarily in a defense position, but they will leave it as quarters for the soldiers. And that makes a lot of problems because then there is Sloviansk left, and they live, they are almost in, in bunks, like on a ship in several layers, in order to have room for all these soldiers in the houses. A new development is after the Russians were able to get Pokrovsk, and now you don't hear Ukrainians talk about having a little part of Pokrovsk. They don't have any part of it anymore, to the best of my knowledge, at least. And now the Russians are pushing further to the west from Pokrovsk, and they're trying to enter Zaporizhia. They have not advanced very much. They have advanced somewhat, some few kilometers, and they are so close to Zaporizhia that Zaporizhia is within range of ordinary artillery and FPV kamikaze tactical drones. It's a big city, and it's not something the Russians will be able to take in just a few weeks or so. The Battle of Zaporizhia, if it comes to that, will last for probably all this year and maybe even part of next year. But should they get Zaporizhia, it will be a very, very serious blow to the Ukrainian armed forces. And that could actually be the beginning of the end of Ukraine if that happens. So let's hope not. And when I say this, it sounds very alarming. And yes, this message is alarming, but also, as I said, it's not something that will happen tomorrow. The Ukrainian forces are defending it very strongly. They have to withdraw occasionally, but only very few hundred meters at a time. And with that speed, it will take very, very long time before Russian forces will be inside Zaporizhzhia. I also work, as Victor said, I work as a journalist. It has not been much journalism for a long time. I have been drowned in work with our association, so it has been about logistics, the demonstration, fundraising, and a lot of tasks like that. But it seems that we will get some funding from some Danish industry, and it's funding of the kind where they don't want to be mentioned. They do it because they see it as a long-term interest that the world, the West, will not be thrown into a new crisis, and this is something we need to win. The first thing I will do is to go with some Russian forces in Ukraine. And before you lose your breath, they are Russian forces in Ukrainian uniform. They are all Russian citizens, but most of them has either the father or the mother, or at least the grandmother or grandfather are from Ukraine. And they lived in Ukraine when the full-scale war started. So they have relations with Ukraine. Not only, for example, I know that there are some people from Siberia, and the Yakuti and Buryatia people, they don't have Ukrainian relations. They came to Ukraine, traveling all the way from their home areas, and we're talking about 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 kilometers. It's a big country to join the Ukrainian forces. I wish I could say that there are many of them. How many they exactly are is a military secret, and they have not told me. I have my guesses, but I better keep this for myself. But I must here turn to the statement from a good friend, Katja Glickman from Novaya Gazeta, the Russian opposition newspaper, and state what she stated, and that is, as far as we are talking about organized Russian opposition against Putin, it doesn't exist. It has been destroyed completely by Putin. He has been very good at it, and the opposition needs to reform itself into a new organization and build up again under very, very difficult conditions, because you all know his former KGB, and the KGB, they were very good at rounding up opposition and put them in camps or worse. So it's not so good what I have to tell. I also must say that even a lieutenant colonel stated that he didn't see it possible for the Ukrainian army to take back the occupied land taken by the Russian Federation. And I agree with him, because the way he talks is with the expectation that Ukraine will not get more help than what they receive now. And I agree with it. But I reminded him that if his logic should be valid in the case that Ukraine would get the needed funding and the needed technology in needed quantities, and they still couldn't do it, well, in that case, Israel should not exist, this small country, against these many, many hundreds of thousands of Arab soldiers. They are even more like David and Goliath than Ukraine and Russia. So if we provide the needed support to Ukraine, I firmly believe that they are still able to take back their land. And I think, unfortunately, that the only way to stop Russian expansion into Ukraine is to do it on the battlefield, or if the situation, the political situation is so that Ukraine has to accept Russian occupation, and not only occupation, but annexation of huge parts of Ukraine. The only way to stop it from being repeated within some few years will be that Ukraine will become a member of NATO, and we give full guarantees, and they are guarantees that really are trusted in Moscow. And your guess is as good as mine if that is possible. I think Denmark would, but we are not big enough. And yes, if the US is coming back to the good old days when we had a reliable alliance, yes, then US Army would be here again to help us. And by the way, I do understand that Americans think that 2 times has been enough. What can I say? We are working on improving our armies here. I think often on my grandfather, who hated the Germans. He was born in 1892, so he saw both World Wars, and therefore he hated them. And today, his grandson is almost praying for German rearmament. It's really a strange world today. But in short, I think it's possible. I think I really feel that the Ukrainian soldiers, they are in a very difficult situation, but they still have the fighting spirit, and also because they know what happens if they lose their country. It will happen like in Mariupol, like in Bucha, like in Izium, like in all the other places. There have been mass graves all over the place, and that will be for Ukraine in large scale. And it's not very new, because even the Fourth did that against Novgorod, killing huge numbers of people. And after that, the rest of Novgorod thought that it was a good idea to become Russian. A same method for more than 500 years, unfortunately. Part of the support we received for our association includes also cooperation with arms development here in Europe, especially on drones. There are 2 states in the world with experience in modern drone war, and that is Russia. They will not help us, and Ukraine, and they very much want to help us. And Ukraine are building factories in Europe right now in order to protect them against bombardment. And it's Ukrainian technology being built there with Ukrainian designed drones, and they are much more advanced than anything we have. Well, our association is about to enter a cooperation with an NGO covering all of, or most of Europe, where very skilled drone engineers in all our countries are joining forces in order to make something advanced, cheap, and in volumes to deliver to the Ukrainian army. And we are part of that. So later, I will be able to come back to you and make a story about the volunteer Russians fighting in Ukraine. They are fighting at the moment outside Kharkiv. I cannot tell you more precise than that. And I can tell you about arms development that will probably, regarding joining the Russians, that will be within a couple of months. I can come back and tell you about that. And when we are talking about arms development, I can come back to you and tell you about that, and different kinds of philosophies between NATO and Russia, and of course also Ukraine. And we have very different ways of developing weapons. And unfortunately, as we see in Ukraine, it is very skillfully made by the Russian engineers. We tend to underestimate them all the time, and it's the most stupid thing we can do to underestimate the enemy. Shahed, for example, yes, 90% are shot down, maybe it's 80%, whatever. It's still much more than 50%. But when I look at out of my window at night in Kiev, I can see the Shaheds, I can see the hit, I can see the damage on the buildings. So it is a weapon where it's designed to have great losses, but it's cheap, it's expensive to shoot it down, and when only 10% hit, it's still very, very cost effective. And that is what arms are about, cost effectiveness. And Shahed is a very effective weapon in that logic. So that is basically what I had to tell today. A lot of different developments. There have been good news the last month about Ukrainian gains on the front line. But again, I warn you, don't exaggerate it. Be happy for the victories, of course, but don't think that it's the end of the war in favor of Ukraine. We are not at all there. I'm afraid we will also have at least one, probably two or even three more annual memorials for this war. It's not near the end at all at the moment. Thank you very much. And please, questions.
Thank you, Jens, for your wonderful analysis. And I'm sure there are questions. The first one is from Dr. Leonard Deutsch, our contributor and friend, please. Leonard.
First, I'd like to second what Victor said and apologize for the current administration's stance on Greenland and Denmark. It's totally unsupported by, I think, most Americans. The other question was, I know that in the early part of this century, UN supervised elections in Ukraine. Has there been any discussion of having a plebiscite by which people could self-determine which of the two blocks they want to live in under supervised? I mean, I know there are problems with elections that Russia is going to try to send in people to vote, but has there been any support for the idea of the determination made by voting?
There are several issues in it. The Ukrainian constitution doesn't allow it, but a constitution is a thing that can be changed. So when it comes to that, the constitution doesn't allow elections at all when there is a situation with a war. So it would be unconstitutional to have general elections in Ukraine right now. But Zelensky recently said that, of course, they can change the constitution and have these elections. He hopes that there would be fair elections in Russia at the same time. And it all became a bit of a laughing stock and not something really meant heartfully, faithfully. When you look at the referendum back in 1991, the only region where there were close race between stay or leave from the Soviet Union was Crimea. and that was 54% voting in favor of staying with an independent Ukraine and not staying with the Soviet Union, meaning the Russian Federation in reality. And the last free poll before the occupation of Crimea took place was in 2013, and there the numbers in favor of staying with Ukraine had increased at least some. I think it was something like 65% that wanted to stay. There could be reason why some of those people in Crimea could change the mind back, but I don't think that there would be a real majority. And also remember Girkin, who was an officer from FSB in Crimea during the referendum, and he boosted in Yekaterinburg television that he had to force the locals to go to vote. No need to worry about what they voted, because they were absolutely sure who would count it. And then the interviewer said, "Oh, but the Russians must have come." And then he said, no, we also had to force them. No one of the locals wanted to vote. It's not a full picture of it, but it's an indication. And we also must not underestimate the effects of long-term war, that some people for sure think that this must come to an end. And the effect of that can be difficult to predict. But I don't see a referendum in any near future.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very much. Here, John Yeager from Local Sunflower Seeds. Please, John.
Thank you so much for being with us today. I have two questions. Earlier on in the presentation, you said that the French were ready. Were you referring to their capability? And then number two, in terms of military. Number two, we had reports here that the Ukrainians had made some advances in the Zaporizhzhia area to the tune of maybe 100 kilometers. Can you speak to that? Thank you.
It's correct that the Ukrainian army has advanced on local areas. So when you see at the net result this year, it might even be a little advance by the Ukrainian army in total. But you must remember that the Ukrainian troops are very much worn out. And again, that makes it so complex, because we don't know how the actual situation is on the Russian side. We only know that they also have a very horrible time at the front line. And we know that the Russian soldiers, when they are taken captive by the Ukrainians, they are all very, very hungry. And the Ukrainians have food for them when they are taken prisoner. So we don't have the full picture. At least I don't have the full picture. But my impression is that we have a temporary advantage situation for the Ukrainian army because of very low temperatures. There were minus 26 degrees in Kiev when I was there last time. I had 12 degrees, and that's Celsius, not Fahrenheit. 12 degrees inside the flat, and I was very lucky. Some people had frost inside their flats. Old people died in their beds of cold in Kiev. So that is the situation for the civilians, and also the soldiers have very difficult conditions on the Ukrainian side, but it's even worse on the Russian side. And now we are beginning to have plus temperatures. It's thaw, and soon the ground can take the vehicles again, and then it will start all over probably in April. And that is when we will see how the real situation is between them. So wait and see. It is happy guesswork until we are into April.
Just to follow up on that, what I read was the reason that the Ukrainians were able to make gains was because of the withdrawal of the Starlink system by Musk from the Russians. Any information on that?
I would be careful again with that conclusion, because the Russians have not had Starlink for very long. So if Starlink was important for them, it can only have been for a short period of time. But it is correct that Starlink has been closed down for them, and it has had some positive effects for the Ukrainian army. But if you take, for example, Shaheds, the Russians have developed a very advanced and very, very ingenious navigation system that can work without Starlink. It's a mesh network that's based on the Shaheds, where the outer drones are the ones outside GPS jamming, and then with trigonometry, like the German bombers in World War II, only with much more accuracy of 21st century technology. The other ones will navigate from the two outer drones, and thereby they bypass Ukrainian jamming of the GPS system. The Ukrainians on their side, they are also met with jamming, but they can compensate because they have Starlink on their systems when they are entering Russian airspace. It's not a very clear answer, I must admit that, but I'm careful to make too clear conclusions because much of it at the moment is happy guessing, and it would not be fair to be too firm in my conclusions.
Thank you. Thank you, Jens. Other questions or comments, please? We have a reasonable number of people today.
Yes.
Please, as you think, I need to thank Jens once again, and maybe return with one more at least question to the very beginning of our conversation today. How do you think might the Greenland situation develop or resolve in the future? Do you have any predictions?
We have the unknown factor of Donald Trump, that he can be very impulsive. But I think that it will end with status quo. There will be expansion of US bases on Greenland. We have never opposed that. On the contrary, we support it. You are guaranteed this by the treaty from 1951. You have that right already. We are happy that you have it, because we need a big brother to protect these great land, or especially ice masses, against aggression from the outside. But having said that, the strange thing is that we never ever had Russian or Chinese aggression against Greenland. The first time we have something that at least was a threat of aggression was from our close ally. That was really a surprise for us, I must say. But we know the situation. We can also follow the polls in America. It seems that it will be quite a midterm election you will have later this year, and that hopefully will stabilize the situation, and we can get back. We will not come totally back to normal. I don't think that, because our trust has been shaken, and that you know. To have a confident relationship, it takes years to build it up, and you can destroy it in minutes. And that's where we are right now. We need to rebuild the faithful relations between our countries, and that will take some time. But for sure, Denmark is very interested in it. We know where we are on the globe. We know what our size is, and yes, we at the moment we orientate ourselves to the European Union and the European partners, but even against China, that is no guarantee. So in the long term, we need to stick together. So that's my prediction on that. I think it will end up in status quo, and the US will use the right to expand the bases. By the way, at the moment, there are something like 170 US soldiers on the base. Pacific is the name of it. 50 years ago, you had something like 15,000 soldiers up there. So the US itself has reduced its presence in Greenland very dramatically. So it's really a strange situation.
Thank you, Jens. Thank you. I see no more questions, and I will thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
And we're always very glad to have you on this program. We do not stop, and we will welcome you anytime. We appreciate what you are doing for Ukraine and for Denmark and for the world. Let me say a few final words to our viewers in Ukraine, as is our custom. Дорогі брати і сестри в Україні, ми тримаємо вас у наших щоденних думках і молитвах. Нехай милосердний Бог береже вас у своїй опіці. До наступного тижня. Прощаємось. Слава Україні!
Героям слава. Thank you very
Recording
much.
will stop here. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And I will be happy to be back, especially after I have been with the Russian volunteers. They are not many in numbers, but they are important by their very presence.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.